Team, welcome to Cartel Coaching. I'm Callum Millward. I'm an ex-professional triathlete and 3 times Ironman 70.3 champion. And now I'm getting a proper reintroduction into the sport of triathlon as an age grouper. I spent a number of years at the pointy end of the sport, and now I've got a business, a life, a family, and the same 24 hours as everyone else who's trying to figure out how to be competitive again. And I tell you what, it is super humbling and it's interesting. What I bring to the table is the elite side of things. I'm living the age group reality right now, not going to pretend that they're the same thing. With me every episode is Tim Brazier, who coaches everyone from first timers to Olympians, and Em, our resident age grouper, who is keeping us honest. This is Cartel Coaching, and let's get into it.
Okay, welcome back to Cartel Coaching. Now, boys, I'm going to tell you a story. So, once upon a time, a mid-30s girl decided that she was going to become a triathlete. And at that time, she was really only a runner, so she had a bit of work to do in the swimming and biking department. Now, this girl wasn't overly worried about swimming. She thought to herself, I can swim. I did sports carnivals, primary school, by the way. So one day she got her togs on and she headed to the pool to discover that she wasn't a swimmer. She was the quintessential adult-onset swimmer. And since that moment, the struggle has just been real. So that girl is me, which brings us to today's topic, which is all about adult onset swimmers. Now, I'm extremely keen for this one because I've been swimming for about 2.5 years. I feel like I've really reached a ceiling with as far as I can go in terms of muscling my way through the water. So I'm going to be treating this one almost as my personal coaching session with you, Tim and Cal. So I'd love to hear, where do you think we're going wrong?
Where are we going wrong? Well, firstly, needed to learn to swim more before you're age 10. It's probably your first mistake.
Where were my tiger
That would have
parents?
helped immensely. Yeah. Secondly, it's hard being a sinker, eh? It's a real challenge. It's a real tough one to work your way through. It's the mysterious feel and finesse of swimming that coming in later on is really hard. In the end, there's a whole lot of things that add up into that. And having watched, there's a guy called Andrew McLeod who's in the Cupcake Cartel actually. Fantastic. He's in his late 60s, only learnt to swim about 9 or 10 years ago, is now rolling 100s on like a 140 on a 2-minute base pretty strongly. And it's been really inspirational to watch his commitment to it. And he's turned up regularly, had his ass handed to in sessions, had one-on-one technique sessions, worked hard on his technique, used his toys where necessary, but he's progressed. And he's a really cool example showing that you can get somewhere with your swimming. And he's still doing PBs now in the pool. So 25-meter sprint PBs, he's doing thresholds, PBs, and moving forward. So it can show that you can work your way forward. And it's just getting your building blocks in place with your technique, first and foremost, and then layering on sessions on top of that, which are achievable on a regular basis. And I think actually one of the biggest mistakes why people reach a ceiling like you're reaching, Em, is that it's the same with running. We don't create enough speed reserve. So we get in and we'll just swim lengths and might swim at zone 3 quite a lot because we're all just sucking in the big ones because you're just trying to survive. But really, how often do you go, I'm going to go to 25s on a 2-minute turnaround or 1-minute turnaround, and really teach yourself to swim fast like you might need to run fast? We talked about this a little bit, a couple other podcasts, can I really learn to run fast? Can I do sprints on the bike? Can I get these muscles activated in these right patterns? And that's a big one, I believe, and something that all of us need to keep in our programs across all 3 disciplines as we age.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And Cal, what about you?
I've swam my whole life, so I've been quite lucky. However, I think just like running and biking, there's certain people that have a much better feel for the water. And that's a term that you'll probably hear a lot, is the feel for the water. So, it's often, a lot of people say, hey, tall people are better swimmers, short people are not great swimmers, but there's good examples of shorter people there was a Kiwi triathlete, Karen Doe, who was a pretty short guy, who's an excellent swimmer. Dylan McNeese was an excellent swimmer. So there's no rhyme or reason sometimes. These are guys that just have a really good feel for grabbing the water and pulling themselves through it. Whereas people that don't have a good feel for the water might sort of have the sensation of having noodle arms, where they just feel like their arms are going through the water, not catching anything. So the challenge, I feel like in triathlon, a big barrier to entry is the swim. So if you didn't swim as a kid and didn't do surf life saving, that's another sort of layer on top as well. The open water can be terrifying, but there are ways to inject some life into your swim, even if you're starting triathlon at 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. Like Tim said with Andrew McLeod, there's still plenty of opportunities, and there's a few caveats to a lot of this as well. I think swimming is one of those sports where we very seldom swim continuously. We don't dive in and just swim for half an hour nonstop. We break it up. Whereas if you go for a 3-hour bike ride, you might just ride for 3 hours. So maybe Tim wants to dive into that a little bit and explain why we break up our swim into bite-sized pieces and how we structure like a swim session.
Yeah, well, I think swimming, the hypoxic component is such a big part of it. You don't have that when you're cycling or running. You can breathe really easily, and you can be pretty metabolically efficient as well, riding and running, and cardiovascularly efficient as well. And it's quite a challenge to develop that ability in the pool. Like, how often do you see someone go into a pool and within 2-3 lengths they're standing at the end, their eyeball's about to pop out and they're turning blue because they're struggling for oxygen. Yeah, taker. Whereas people can get on a bike and easily ride for 20 minutes off the couch and probably be okay on a flat piece of ground. They can go for a walk continuously for hours and build up some resilience quite quickly in that regard. But swimming's different because you're laying on the cardiovascular stress with that hypoxic stress, and then there's the technique element to it, where if you don't get your technique right, you're often dragging your feet on the ground, which creates a significant hydrodynamic barrier to getting anywhere near a state of efficiency. It's funny, as we get better in life, in swimming, we then seek out that by putting a band around our ankles to try and create that drag. But we start off naturally with it. I think those are the complexities you work in. So in swimming, we have to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and we only ever really see, when you get to that expert levels, people starting to do reps of 800s, 1000s, 15s, or doing silly sessions like 5x2K in a pool for an open water swimmer, which just do my head in. But that it takes a long time to evolve to that and be really efficient to achieve that. So we break down these sessions where we'll have a really easy warm-up where we might use fins. We always go towards some drills so we're starting to activate ourselves in the right way. As my muscles activating the right patterns, I've got my core locked in, my head in the right place. And then we start to build some intensity into a main set and then cool down. And it's quite a consistent structure, really, across a lot of programs. It's a really staged program.
As an adult onset swimmer, what are some of the challenges you have found with swimming?
Going to the pool? No, I think for me it was really it's
breaking
been
the ice.
All of it, right? Like, yeah, swimming during winter, it's cold, it's miserable. In terms of actually learning to swim, it's having any sort of correction. So I think that's been part of my challenge. Is I just jumped in and had a crack. I didn't even have a coach. In the beginning, I didn't even have a program. I was just vibes-based swimmer, just having a go. And I was doing what you were saying, Tim, just doing these really long lengths and just trying to go as far as I could. So I was doing 5Ks in the pool, just continuous, basically, like just stopping randomly every now and then. But I think what actually happened to me is doing that, I just sort of ingrained all of these not so great behaviors. So I swim in a pretty busy pool. I'm at Sydney Olympic Park and it's chockers. So there's often, 6 to 12 people in a lane. And so I actually found that really intimidating. So that actually led to me swimming with my head looking forward more. And so I have to really think about my head position. It's not natural for me anymore because my natural position is sort of head up. And then just my stroke. I really resonate with noodle arms. Like I don't really feel like I can feel the water sometimes. Sometimes I can. Like, and I go, wow, this is what swimming feels like. And I feel like I've got it. But as quickly as I've got it, it disappears. So it's a mystery.
Often we talk about how, swimming, it's probably one of the most technical of the three sports in triathlon. You might focus on a certain element of your stroke and then you forget another part of the stroke. And then your coach might ask you to do an interval set where you've got to swim faster and then you just forget everything. What are some of the ways, like if you could summarize things in bullet points, some key things for improvement for a swimmer as an adult, how would you summarize that? Like, is it just a higher frequency of getting to the pool? Is it using more equipment? Is it breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, different sets, working on different speeds? What are some of the things you would push people towards?
Yeah, I think if you've got the space and the time, having short frequent sessions when you're a beginner is actually more valuable than trying to turn up twice a week and smash out 4K or 5K, because you can go back with some intention, swim a broken down 2K and really focus on certain elements of your stroke along the way. And the key part of when you're doing that is you're only trying to work on one piece at a time. And as you start to stack those up, that part will keep improving, and then you'll be able to let it go a little bit and work on another part of the stroke, and then they'll start to piece themselves together. The great thing now is we've all got these phones, so having a friend go along and film you is actually really valuable. Because a lot of people haven't seen themselves swim. Like people would think, oh, look, my catch looks beautiful. And then I'm standing on the side of the pool and I can just hear the hand smashing the water on entry, and the elbow dropping as well. And it becomes really visible if you can have a phone there and people can point it out to you. So those are two really good starting points. And then it's once you start to engage in your technique, the key pointers that I look for people is you're trying to find balance in your body. So we always talk about body for balance, arms and legs for power. And you're looking to try find balance through your body. So your head position, your hip position is really important. And then being able to do that on your front and your sides is a really good starting point. And then it leaves you the ability to be able to start to put your hands in the right position, because if you're not balanced, your hands and your arms are going searching to balance you instead of actually pulling the water, or as we'll talk about, more so grabbing the water, and you're trying to pull yourself past that point in the water, because that's how you move forward. If you're just pulling the water, you're probably going to stay in the same spot, just be a hamster on a wheel. Trying to pull yourself apart. And then the next part is, I think my next bullet point would be trying to enhance your speed. So, all right, we're going to do multiple reps, short, fast work, and a repetitive basis. And that might be every second day, depending on how often you can go. And then you're building those reps, and then you might build up the duration of those reps until you can hold your speed, and then you start to play around with the rest intervals on those as well and reduce them down. And it might be that for you to swim 1K with really good technique and good speed, you have to do that all in 25s or all in 50s. And that's okay. The hard part with all of that, as you guys know, as you mentioned, Cal, you go into a squad because like, oh, I need to be pushed. It's really hard mentally to do something by yourself. And then suddenly you're just smashing lengths out, and you've got someone on your feet, you're on someone's feet, and then you try and tumble turn around everybody else. You can tumble turn, and it becomes a real big nightmare. So trying to get yourself an environment in a squad which gives space is really important for me. So having good 10-second gaps, and there's time and space for you to focus on technique.
I think a key thing there is if you can get to a local squad, it will help you immensely. If you can find a coach as well that will provide feedback, which is, like Tim said, if you can get a friend to film you, that's great, because what you think you're doing versus what you're actually doing, could be two different things as well. So if you could get a swim coach that's engaged with you and you're like, hey, coach, can you just make sure my arms aren't crossing over? Can you just make sure certain things, if it's a coach that's invested in you and wants to see you improve, and you're turning up to training, you're investing in the relationship as well, that can help a lot. But just getting along to a swim squad, it'll help you as well achieve the duration, the distance perhaps you would otherwise not achieve by yourself. So mentally, as Tim said, it is really hard to get to the pool by yourself, and oftentimes it's the first session of the week that gets dropped. So I would recommend, if you can get along to a local squad, that would be a great starting point. Em, have you got anything that's helped you in that regard?
I think it's been consistency. So the biggest gains that I had in my swimming was actually when I broke my leg, because it was all that I could do. So even though I wasn't coached at the time, and I was just kind of winging it, being in the pool consistently 5 days a week is actually where I saw the biggest gains. And actually it's been interesting, Tim, since you become my coach, I have sort of changed my swimming a little bit. So pre you, I think I was relying a little bit too much on pool toys, to be honest. So back when I broke my leg, all I was doing was pulling, no pool toys, no nothing. It was just me. My legs were sort of band together, and I was just focusing on pull. And so it was helping. And then as I just got, I don't know, tired, fatigued over the pool, I started introducing a lot of other things, and things that weren't actually in my program either. Like I was just adding stuff because I couldn't keep going. Like fins, for example, I became very reliant on fins to get me through. So I was just bringing them in as soon as I started feeling tired, when I really shouldn't have been. And paddles as well, when I just wanted the session to be over. And so what I've found is, by doing too much of that and not enough just regular swimming, I think it's actually just impacted my ability to swim. So I've been making a real concerted effort the last couple of weeks to not rely on the fins. So I don't even take them to the pool at the moment, or the paddles, like unless it says paddles, which it hasn't yet. And I'm feeling a lot better, to be honest, and I'm actually starting to feel a bit more confident in the pool, which I was definitely losing before.
Tim, what are some of the essential pieces of equipment that we need? There's so many different toys now these days. There's neoprene shorts. There's a lot of people that rely on these items as a crutch, and it can almost lead them into a false sense of security that they're swimming much faster than they are.
Yeah, totally.
What are some of the myths that we can dispel for like your regular age group that's getting to the pool 3 times a week? What are some of the things we could do without, and some of the things that are non-negotiable that we should have at poolside?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is you can do without fins. Yeah, unless you're a really weak swimmer and starting off, like fins are actually something you don't necessarily need. And massive hand paddles, ones that are bigger than your hand and bigger than your face, are also super unnecessary and often lead to huge shoulder issues. So, your paddle should only just be a little bit bigger than your hand for me. And those are 2 big mistakes to see. And fins, as Emma's pointed out, they're just this crutch for people just go back to them when they're starting to feel crap, or they're doing drills, which they're finding really challenging. Fins are good at the start to help to learn that drill, but if you keep them on, you're actually never actually challenging yourself to do the drill properly. So getting away from that. One of the key tools, I reckon, that's come to the market within the last decade that people don't use enough, and I'm probably actually guilty of this in my squad, we don't use it enough, is a front snorkel. Because the breathing is obviously a tricky thing, and then fitting that into the rhythm of your stroke is tricky too. So if you can take out having to rotate for a breath and just keep your head down, you can just find a really nice rhythm, but also your head's down so you can see all the time, and you can start to look for your hand and look for what your stroke's doing under the water. And it also will help you be able to position your head better on a regular basis and get used to creating that habit of having the neck. And I think, front snorkel is an awesome one that people should be looking towards and building into their program.
The snorkel's great because every time you flip turn, you actually waterboard yourself. and so you
Yeah.
have quite an episode at the end. So your problems
Yeah.
all of a sudden become worrying about trying to stay alive.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. It's just like the open water. It's perfect. Yeah.
I'll add to that as well. It is a good opportunity where you take the focus off breathing, because that can be a stress point for some people. Then you can start to see how your arms are coming under your body, and if you're crossing over, because obviously we don't want to be crossing over. So it gives you a bit of immediate feedback as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic one. And it's critical. And the more feedback you can give yourself, the better. So a coach once had a great setup and had a camera in the water and a big screen on delay. So every swimmer would come in, stop, and 10 seconds later see themselves, and they'd push off again the next rep. And it was the most effective piece of feedback. And he didn't have to manage it. You know, people would just self-govern, and he could focus on other tasks as well. And I thought that was really neat, because every little piece you can get just helps you build a little bit momentum forward. And Em's going to get to have a swim camp in a couple of weeks where we'll absolutely tear a stroke to bits and figure some stuff out.
Right.
One thing
Ready.
with that as well is I almost feel like when you do stroke correction, it's a step back for two steps forward. And sometimes you might do some stroke correction and then you'll move on to a set where you're doing harder, faster swimming. It's hard to sometimes carry over those changes immediately, but I think it's something that you need to persevere at, because you'll almost go back to your default stroke, and that's okay sometimes. But if you can slowly change that habit of whatever you're trying to correct and just hang in there with it.
Yeah, totally. Just got to give up. And I think look for windows within your periodized year where you can give up having to chase time. Like it's okay to be 3 or 4 seconds slower to improve your stroke to then go 3 or 4 seconds faster. I think it's a really good one, Cal. It's just making sure you're keeping committed to your process and looking for opportunities to do that. And then, like you said, to get that coach on board that's going to give you that regular feedback, it's such a win.
If you don't have a local squad or a local coach, what's probably the next best bet with that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? So I think phone a friend and have them video you is really good. And then even being able to try get that video off to a swim coach or a friend that might know swimming, it's pretty cool, and get their feedback for you. And then try get them to send you back a video which shows someone doing it really well versus how you're doing it, so you can see the change. And then trying to utilize, so utilizing a coach by distance is really good. Utilizing feedback on board from a friend is fantastic. And then just turning up consistently and delivering is really important, and getting that frequency. And yeah, I know for a lot of people probably that 2K mark is your ceiling, right? But that's okay. If you can get 2K in and do it on a regular basis, that's great, especially if it's delivering really good quality.
And I think you touched upon it earlier, like more frequent, shorter swims are better than no swims at all. And I guess there could be an argument for, hey, if you're really struggling to get to the pool and you need to put on some toys just to get yourself to the pool, put on some toys and just get to the pool, because that swim is going to be better than no swim. And I think Em talked about it as well, like when she's got a broken leg, if you're at the pool more frequently, you start to develop a bit of a feel for the water, how that water feels. Because at the end of the day, swimming is quite basic. You're pulling yourself through the water. You're grabbing an apple, you're putting it in the pocket. There's all these different cues that you can use where you're grabbing a rope, you're pulling yourself through. But at the end of the day, you're trying to pull yourself through a body of water. And I guess we don't need to overcomplicate it too much.
No, not at all. And I mean, you look at like say Alistair Brownlee and Lucy Charles, they don't have these amazing perfect strokes. They don't look beautiful in the water like a Phelps or a Thorpe, etc. But they developed an amazing capacity and efficiency in the water. And they must do something well under the water to get hold of it. But their stroke rates are really, really high, and they're turning over really, really well, which is what an open water swimmer does. They've developed that through a lot of time in the pool.
I would liken that to a lot of, the African runners who don't necessarily look picture perfect in terms of form, with maybe legs splaying out, but they're still, the process, something's still working, that it's working well. And it's similar to swimming, right? We can spend all this time trying to look good above the water, but so long as under the water where it's actually mattering is functional, then
That's right.
That's all that matters. I still remember a Kiwi professional athlete, Chris Gemmell. Um, on top of the water, I never thought he looked amazing, but he always would come out front pack, whether that was tactics or just aggression or whatever it was, getting on people's hips or feet. But he was always be amongst it. There was
Yeah.
quite a number of swimmers like that who didn't look great on the top, but they were functional.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think you can look out if people start to watch some of the ITU stuff now, which is the best swimmers, and just watch strokes. You'll see half the top, well, more than half the top field is all pretty ugly. It's just a grip and grind in a way. But they have developed a really nice skill set under the water, and they've developed a huge amount of efficiency. And actually, going back to Em's point before, saying to think about like pull is important, like upper body strength is important in swimming, and so a lot of people who can develop a really good pull buoy paddle speed often transfer that nicely into the open water as well. So we don't want to shy away from that, but we also got to make sure that we don't rely on those toys all the time. Otherwise, we don't develop the stroke that's going to support that.
I think a big key that I learned at some point during my career of swimming was to relax as well, relax in the water, become one with the water, like a fish or an eel, right? They don't have this big skeleton where they're firm. So I think I still remember a famous Australian coach, Dennis Cottrell, when we would do like a hard set, and he was like, it was threshold or VO2, and it was fast and it was super hard. Um, he would always talk about relaxing the body and just relax. You swim fast, relax, but don't tense up. Don't raise your shoulders up around your ears. There's certain people, and I notice it a lot with runners that get into swimming as well, where you can just tell they're just rigid, not as mobile, and they're just fighting the water the whole time. Whereas I don't know if this is a thing with swimmers, but so many swimmers seem chilled out and relaxed. They're sitting there with their legs hyperextended, but obviously there's something for me in that where they just can feel the water and they just become sort of one with it.
Yeah, I totally on board with you, Cal, because imagine trying to run or ride and hold all this tension all the time and try to actually be effective with your body. It just wouldn't happen. And I think that's what we see in the open water is a lot of people, they tense up. So they get so frightened and nervous about it. And then they just really struggle to apply power. And then the breathing gets really rapid, and then they're on their back the next minute lying and trying to suck oxygen in. And once they can get out of that melee, which is the start of the race, and start to relax, then they're like, oh, I'm swimming fine now. I'm all good. This is great. And so the tension part of it is one of the things which I think is a precursor to the panic attacks that we see. And if you can get over that and you can learn to be relaxed, you will swim faster, and you'll also avoid those panic attack episodes.
Yeah, I got to say that my swimming is never worse than after I've watched a whole lot of tutorial videos of everything that I should be doing. And I think it's due to that tension, right? Like if I've been scrolling like stuff on Insta and looking at different things that I should be doing, it definitely does something to you, and it makes you so much tenser. And so I definitely relate to that. I'm keen to know a bit more about like the translation between pool and open water swimming. I think a lot of people, particularly people who are doing their first, say, 70.3 or something, there is that anxiety to go and do a whole lot of open water swimming. So yeah, I'd be keen on your take of how much open water you should be sort of mixing in as a triathlete versus pool stuff.
Hal, you've been back in open water recently. How's it feeling, mate, after a long time out?
Well, I guess for me, it's probably muscle memory more than anything. So first thing I think of as soon as I go open water, I need goggles with good visibility. So I've gone off and got myself a nice pair of goggles that are clear. They'll just be my open water swimming goggles. A hot tip for keeping your goggles clear is baby shampoo or, anything like that, right? So I use baby shampoo or liquid detergent, drop a bit in each goggle, swirl it around, rinse it out thoroughly, or you'll get pink eye, and you'll learn that the hard way. So basically, it helps sort of clear it. The other thing as well is I've always thought about, like, obviously sighting is a key thing in open water. Otherwise, you're going to be swimming further as well. So picking landmarks, whether it's trees, buildings, swim, the turn cans. The other thing as well is stroke rate. I always find you've got to increase the stroke rate a little bit, because it's not like the pool where it's a flat body of water. It's a moving body of water. There's tides, there's rips, there's different things going on as well. But the hard thing I find in open water is just it's continuous swimming, whereas in the pool we're breaking it up into sets. So I'll generally swim a lot shorter in the open water, up to 2K, usually not further than 2K, and almost always try and swim with someone else just for safety as well. A bright color kit goes great. The other thing is obviously open water swimming, depending on where you live in the world, you're probably going to need a wetsuit. And that's another whole kettle of fish to unpack as well. And there's some tips and tricks with that. Tim, maybe you want to touch upon what a wetsuit does to sort of change your stroke and how we can sort of help each other with that.
Yeah, well, wetsuits can really impact your flexibility. So your ability to actually get into a higher elbow stroke, which is really traditional swimming, is really hard. And then also can impact your catch and getting into a really good catch at the front. So from a stroke point of view, the back end of your stroke becomes really important, making sure you've got a really good exit and connection, and then also looking for a slightly wider swinging recovery. So you'll see a lot of good open water swimmers. They're not this traditional high elbow getting through, and they've got more of a wider recovery out here. And it's going to work with the wetsuit better. And in fact, it actually works with your shoulder blade better and how that functions on your back. And we often see people with the wider arm stroke have less shoulder issues when they start to up their swimming volume. And then you're going to have a lot more strength too when you're in a wetsuit. So people who don't wear wetsuits often, and then they turn up to a race and it's a wetsuit swim, they're going to cook their shoulders in the race, because it takes a lot more strength and really getting used to that wetsuit before you can swim efficiently and effectively in it. So they're really key dynamics. And what the other thing a wetsuit does is, it, depending on the type that you get, is it'll lift your hips up. So start to put your hips in a different position, and that's a different feeling. So you have to be used to that as well. And you often see the more experienced swimmers have less buoyancy through the hips because they can naturally get there themselves. But the less experienced swimmers are searching for those wetsuits with lots of chunky additions in around the hips, because it helps get you in a better position. And that's why we often see in a wetsuit race the concertina. So the top swimmers don't get as much out of a wetsuit as the back end swimmers do, and that'll bring the fields together. So we're often less likely to see breaks and splits in the packs. If we're watching an ITU, or Sam Long or Lionel Sanders aren't as far out the back generally with a wetsuit on, they're much closer to the front. So, and the trick with a wetsuit is everyone's like, oh, this brand's better and this brand's better, and there certainly is a couple really top brands in the market, but generally it comes down to your fit. So trialing a wetsuit, making sure it fits, either wearing, I've seen males wearing female ones, females wearing male ones, and getting the right fit in around the shoulders is super crucial, so that you've got the flexibility to be able to move. And a really good wedgie is vital before swimming. You just jump around in that thing and get it right up your crutch, because it'll free up your shoulders for some action.
And Em, obviously being new to open water swimming, what are some of the things that you find overwhelming? Because it can be a daunting process as well, right? You can't just stop. You swallow water. If it's a choppy swim, the visibility goes. That can be unnerving as well. The visibility in the water as well as above the water. We've done races where it's muddy water, there's silt, you can't see anything. The only time you can sight is when you lift your head up. Lifting your head up can be difficult. What are some of the things that you've found?
Yeah, when I started, it was fear-based. So I had a real rough entry into open water swimming. I'd never done any of it before. And my first time when I tried, I just went to a regular beach, and I couldn't get out past the breakers. It was too frightening for me. That feeling of being far out was just really awful. And then on my second attempt at open water swimming, it was in a lake, and then seaplanes started landing on me. So really doubled down on that trauma. But what I found is the things that were really stopping me from doing the open water swimming was that you really do feel alone out there, and it's scary, and it feels like, if you're in a lake, there's boats, there's all sorts of things, and yep, you can have the little floaty thing behind you and your bright cap, but it can feel very, very scary. There's sea monsters, things are touching you sometimes, and you can't see where you're going, and so I think when I started, things that helped me sort of overcome the fear is I actually got out and started doing strategic ocean like races. So I'd get into surf life-saving clubs where they were doing open water swim things, and I was the worst swimmer. Like, these people were great, they were all the proper surf life-saving people, but it allowed me to go out and swim with other people, so it took away all of that fear, so I could get the practice without the fear. And then I found, like what you were saying, Cal, I found a buddy so that I was swimming with someone instead of just by myself, and I think that really helped. But I guess in terms of my technique and things that I struggle with, it's definitely sighting. I feel like that's a real pain point for me. It feels like I just stop. It's like I just slow right down. And there's definitely something that happens in open water that makes it challenging, just from, maybe, I don't know if it is a body position point of view, but I'm definitely slower even with a wetsuit.
Yeah, and maybe some of that's coming down to that tension you're feeling when you're out there. Not able to really execute your stroke properly. Maybe haven't developed enough strength. We just talked the other day about how you're back in the gym a huge amount more, and how that can help you develop some strength that you're going to be able to apply. And then the other thing in and around the sighting, I think often people underestimate how much they should be sighting, and also the head position when they sight. And you'll see a lot of people, they'll lift their head right out the water, the chin's out, and they're scanning for the buoy. And as soon as you do that, your hips are just going to drop, and you just become this, it's the right word for it, drag in the water. And so you need to actually be able to just lift your eyes out like a crocodile. You're stalking some prey, and then breathe to the side instead. You don't want to be doing the double eyes and head up, getting right out. So, and that's going to happen every third breathing cycle. So when you can train that in the pool, it's eyes up, breathe to the side, and then you might breathe twice more, and then it's go again, eyes up, breathe to the side, boom. And then you're regularly sighting, and just becomes a natural part of your rhythm. And then you can keep your eye on the buoys better. You don't, go 6 or 8 breaths without seeing them. And also your hips are staying up really well. And it's an innate skill you have to develop and start developing in the pool before you can transfer it to open water.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot you can do in the pool as well, like Tim said, where we, almost every week, we do a little bit of sighting. We'll do head-up swimming. So swimming every stroke up for like 25 meters, and then 25 meters back to swim properly. And then all of a sudden it feels great when you've got your head back down. But there's a few tips and tricks like that. I always found as well, swimming in lakes where it's fresh water, the visibility is clear. There's a few cheats where you don't have to sight as much above the water. If you can look through the water and just follow bubbles, I mean, you're trusting the person in front of you swimming the correct direction. But there's certain things, and like anything, right? The more you expose your body to it and you expose yourself to it, the better you'll get at it. So if you can get into the open water once a week and do a short 20-minute, 30-minute swim with a group, great. Try and just get a few friends together. Most of us have a lake, a res, or an ocean close by. You can do it in the summer months, and you'll start to pick up those tips and tricks.
Well, that's a wrap. But if you want to keep the conversation going, come find us on Instagram at cartel.coaching. And for coaching, camps, and community, you can check out our webpage. I've linked it in the show notes. See you next time.